All right, what is up, guys? It is just Ben and I today. Isaiah is focusing on being a good father and husband today because his daughter is sick. So he is not able to attend because it would be chaos. And yeah, so it's just going to be Ben and I today. We're actually going to be talking about something really interesting, which is going to be forced time curves, and we're going to specifically be analyzing some and making sense of them so that some of you guys who are interested in that or would want to do force play testing or forced time force play testing would be able to, I don't know, at least make sense of it a little bit. And I would recommend watching this on YouTube. If you're listening to this, that's fine. I don't know how much you'll be able to follow, but we'll put it up on the podcast streaming platform anyways. And before we do that, we're going to talk about Ben's training because he asked me a question and I was like, let's just wait until the chat or sorry, wait until the podcast and we can go over it there. So Ben's question was, what do I do after I do this eccentric cycle? Backstory, Ben is a known program switcher. He likes to just mix it up all the time, has a hard time staying on one macro cycle. And that is probably to his detriment because he gets involved in volleyball, he gets involved in basketball, all this other stuff. Anyways, so he's working on now this eccentric focus cycle with overloaded eccentrics at moderate volumes. They're not too crazy, but they are very intense. And after he finishes this, what I was going to tell you, Ben, is what I would probably recommend doing is getting the data on how you like the results of the cycle, right? So wait and see how you jump on. I guess that's probably going to be Friday. Are you on week 2 or 3?
I'm on week 2. And I think you only had 2 weeks programmed. So
Yeah,
I did one extra
most
week of
people
loading
can't
and then I'll be
survive week 3. What have you lowered?
I have now lowered 120% of my squat max, which is 405, but I definitely
For a half squat?
Yeah, like half parallel-ish, yeah.
So, I mean, you could run it one more week. How are you jumping? Like absolute doo-doo, probably?
I've only had one jump session so far with it.
It was
And
bad,
it
right?
was, yeah, it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
it
think I
was,
saw that on your story. Yeah,
yeah,
so I would see how you do this week. I would assume it's also going to be bad. And if that's the case, definitely only run 2 weeks of it. Most people cannot survive. I mean, you can do it. It's just that you're trashed for an extended period of time, which makes it kind of not worth it. So I would just see how you jump on Friday or Saturday this week and then kind of reassess what you want to do. I mean, some guys will magically get really good adaptation from it and they'll jump high from the specificity. Generally, if you actually go hard on the eccentrics, though, it just thrashes you as it should. And I would probably assess where you're at, take the deload week, see how you feel after the deload week. If you're still thrashed, you might want to take another unload or go back to volume. You could also increase specificity, but that's higher risk. And generally, you're going to take out the dunk sessions when you do that. So it's like a give and take relationship. And yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
I was thinking about doing like John Evans special after this.
You could,
Just
yeah, you
unload
could do
for a
that for
month.
like you could. So in my experience, especially a 1 foot, but I typically need more volume built up. Like you've technically only built up, what is that going to be? 2 weeks of intensity and volume.
Yeah, but I have been
Intensifying.
training pretty hard for like 3 days a week for 6 months or
Oh
so.
yeah, in that case, nah, but your volumes are really low for some of that.
The session volumes, yes, but the weekly volumes aren't too bad because like that's why I was doing
Was that when you were doing the
50
VBT
days.
stuff though?
Yeah, it was some of the like half it was the VBT stuff, and then the other half was more traditional with just like the VBT tracking. But I didn't like I wasn't going based off of just strictly VBT. But
Okay. Well, I would definitely do Jonathan special for 2 weeks after this. Then I would run this for 2 weeks on, see how buried you are, then probably do touch up volume and intensity at the beginning of the week, and then taper off. Like front load the week and then taper off, so you recover by the end of the week, and then repeat that and taper off. And each week your performance should climb up or at least stay the same. It definitely shouldn't be as bad as what it was last week or what's probably going to be this week, but who knows? Maybe you'll bounce back. Adrenaline, whatever. Adrenaline's the great equalizer. It overcomes all training fatigue sometimes. It literally and caffeine that can really overpower most of the training fatigue, neural fatigue, whatever. So yeah, I would definitely consider that. But speaking of the eccentric force, let's get into some force time curves here. So basically, force time curves, you're looking at force plates. You jump on the force plate, either counter movement jump, standing jump. Some people do approach jumps on them. They can measure forces in all three axes, but most of the time, people use the Hawkins ones, which are only in the y-axis. So I actually have a big qualm with that because, in my opinion, force plates should measure horizontal forces and measure rotational forces. Specifically, when you look at things like high jump, like that data is invaluable, and you can't see specifically what is happening with just 3D motion capture or visually watching it. You really need to see the forces on the ground for comparison purposes. Now, if you have both, that's creme de la creme when you're really looking at something like high jump, because you're looking at rotations across all three axes. You're rotating forwards, you're rotating laterally, and you're twisting. And those are all types of rotation. So, yeah, that's why I don't love only uni-axial force plates, but they are still really, really good for looking at things like rate of force development or peak force or even jump height it can give you, and tracking that stuff longitudinally across time. My other kind of qualm with it is that I've used a lot of the. Have you used the Hawkins force plates, Ben?
No, they never let me. We have some at the school, but they never let me use them because I had to have a supervisor and stuff.
So what?
I
You need a
know. I
supervisor?
asked them. I'm like, hey, can I come in and test? I mean, even if you have someone that helps monitor data, and they were like, nah, it's only for faculty. Which
What?
I know. I was so disappointed.
Wait. You're telling me that your university said that you couldn't use the force plates and learn how to use the force plates because it was only for faculty?
Yes, dude.
That
Yeah.
is whack.
And they
Dude.
don't, and they have to bring them into like they don't. They're not on site all the time. Like I think someone stores
I
them somewhere.
used to have a pair of them that Hawkins lent me,
I
and
know. I
I
was
would
so disappointed.
use regularly, but they broke a lot of the time. Like I'm not a big fan, honestly, of Hawkins. I'm not their biggest fan. Truly, I'm not. And the reason why is because I had these force plates. I shipped them back. They shipped me something I needed. I tried to fix it. It didn't work. And they're like, well, you haven't given us any data. I'm like, yeah, because your force plates aren't working. Like, what am I supposed to do with force plates that don't collect data? Like,
I would love to
and
have fourth place though.
yeah, but it really is one of those things where it's only as good as it just. Here's the thing, too, dude. You know what force plates will pretty much always corroborate with or perfectly in line with jump height. So like just look how high you're jumping, and the force plate's probably going to show the exact same thing. Or visually, you can just see things a lot of the time. Like once you use a force plate for a little while, it's pretty easy to tell like what certain curves are going to look like when you watch the athlete on them, and you kind of say, oh, that's what a eccentric curve looks like, or concentric curve looks like, or that's what a high RFD is. And the other thing is the RFD metrics are so like a counter movement jump is so non-specific. I needed it for approach jumps, and I needed to see the horizontal vectors in my case, and I couldn't get that data. So it's like, well, this is okay if you're going to look at some metrics, but it doesn't really tell the full story unless you're in the kind of the case of what we're looking at today. So those are my qualms with it and what I didn't like about it and what I wanted. Like I really embedded force plates are really what you should have. Like
Yeah,
that's
and you probably need like a bunch of them, like in a whole
no,
15-foot
I
area
mean,
for a
so when I
takeoff,
went to High
maybe.
Point University, they had like an embedded one on a runway for a track, and that was like pretty sufficient. I think it was
Okay.
like two force plates that were maybe like I want to say they were like 2 by 3 feet. You know what I mean, something like that. And two of them was like pretty good. They might have been slightly bigger, but you could fit your plant on it if you were smart. You wouldn't be able to land on it, but if you're just looking at the takeoff mechanics, you'd be fine, especially off
Okay.
one foot. Anyways, so let's get into this. Ben, you have these? Are you texting me them,
I
or
put
where
them
are they?
in the chat, in the group, in the coach chat.
Coaches chat, coach chat, coach chat. Oh yeah. All right. So these are from who are these from?
Some guy on YouTube. I was just watching a force plate video of him, and I don't remember his. I think his name is Cyan or Cyan Training, but he's a force plate guy, and he just posted some of his athletes' data on his YouTube, and I just happened
I
to come
feel like I
across
know
it.
who this is, but let
I
me.
think he has a decent follow on Instagram. I don't think his YouTube has a huge following, but I
Um,
think it's like say. I think it's Saysan is his name. I don't know. I don't know his first name, but
okay.
anyways,
I'm trying to
that's
get
where the data was
the
from.
screen sharing here. So let's go present screen share. There we go. All right. You can see that. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I don't know why it full screened there, but that's okay. Yeah, so we have, I don't know if this is going to pop up full screen. Yeah, it's not going to show it. So let me try. Did you just take a picture from your phone?
Yeah.
That's all right. I can do it like this. So we go present, screen share, window, entire screen. I don't think there's anything crazy on there. All right. Can you see that?
Go. Yeah.
All right, cool.
There's our eccentric dominant jumper.
So how are you identifying when you're looking at this curve, Ben? What are we seeing here? I have some ideas, but I want to hear what what your
Yep.
shoot. This is not this is yeah, I gotta just somehow share that window. 1 second. All right, now I got this sorted. I had to open it with preview before we looked at it. So we have this first curve we're looking at. Would you consider this good, bad? What are we looking at here? It looks like
I believe it is good. I think this is a 40-inch CMJ, if I remember right. Actually,
you said a 40-inch counter movement jump.
it's something like that. It's
On
something
what?
crazy.
On a vertex or on a force plate?
I think it's equivalent to a vertex. So I don't know what what the actual force plate jump was, but
Well, you can look at the flight time.
yeah, I don't know what the flight time says.
So
But
I mean, right here.
regardless of what the jump height is, this is a good jump. Let's just
Oh,
put that.
wait. Oh, you can't see it. It would be from this half. We can't
Yeah,
see it.
it's on the right.
But we would be able to tell the flight time, and I could tell you roughly how high that jump was.
Yeah.
But let's call it 40 inches on a vertex, because 40 inches on a force plate
I
is
know,
like
yeah, it's
46
like,
inches. That's like 46 inches on a vertex.
Yeah. But it's a good jump on a force plate. Let's put it that way.
For sure.
So you're looking at this is CMJ, by the way, a standing jump,
Mm.
and this is what I would
CMJ's
categorize
counter movement jump, just so everyone knows. It's like what they do in the combine,
counter movement jump.
NFL combine.
So this is counter movement jump, and I would call this an eccentric dominant jumper because you can see. So after the unweighting phase, which is kind of the yellow,
So this is the unweighting phase. So this is them lowering down. They're weighing less than their body weight, which means gravity is accelerating them downward, their mass downwards. And then right here is where they start to push against the ground. The ground is pushing back up on them. And now they're back at the system weight, which is their body weight, essentially, at least.
Yep. And then you get your eccentric rate of force development, which is that in kind of where that red part is.
Right. So where is amortization here? Do you know where amortization is?
It's right after the red. It's between the red and the green.
Okay.
So it's kind of like that little valley in a basically in that area is amortization, and then you have your concentric peak, which is that one. Yep.
You're looking at this is your eccentric.
Yep, that's your eccentric peak, and then you have your little valley, which is your isometric, and then you have your concentric. Yep.
Cool. So, and this is maybe one thing to consider that I don't know if a lot of people realize is these curves look wildly different depending on the activity.
Hugely different.
Yeah. Yes. Like this is why it's sometimes difficult or really valuable to have a 3D motion capture synchronized with this. And we did this in my master's degree, but it's very difficult and the software is kind of a pain in the butt. But basically you have a software that is synchronizing the 3D motion capture, which is like, and sometimes you have to do it manually where like you'll have to clap sync it and then like look at the force plate and then try to synchronize what is happening on the force plate with what the 3D motion capture is happening. But then it has to be like the same frame rate or data collection rate on relatively both of them. But then like force plate data, you can get like 1,000 data points per second. And then on like video, you're looking at 240 frames per second. And then you also need a lot of light. So it can be very complex to get that together. That's why it's very hard to do. That's why P3 is interesting. But if you talk to a lot of people who work with force plates, like my friend Dean, and work with a lot of 3D motion capture, they're oftentimes not looking at the more complicated, complex stuff. Like P3's just kind of looking at it and being like, oh, well, this is your deficit. So we're just going to hammer you with a bunch of these different exercises. Like that's pretty much how they train. Whereas my friend Dean is saying, okay, I'm really, really forceful, really, really high output. Why can I not throw as hard as these other guys who don't have as much output? And he's problem solving and then seeing what is happening in 3D motion capture between these two and how do I fix that weak link versus just like a general shotgun approach, which a lot of the time is what at least he had alluded to what a lot of the time these guys with 3D mocap and force plates kind of do. They don't actually like try to solve anything. They're just like doing it for assessments to try to make money, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It can be really valuable too. So getting into this, so like you said, Ben, we have in a counter movement jump, this is what your curve is going to look like. You're going to have these two peaks, and this is your amortization. Here's your eccentric peak and then concentric peak.
Mm-hmm.
So eccentric, isometric, concentric. We have a stretch shortening cycle. Anything else that you want to note about this?
Like I alluded to earlier, this is what. So, well, you were saying how the curves can look drastically different. So this would be an example of an eccentric dominant jumper of someone who like throws themselves into the ground and then springs back up versus someone who kind of slowly lowers, maybe gets to a deeper level of knee flexion, hip flexion, and then jumps back up. So can you show the other curve that I sent?
Yeah. Give me 1 second here. So let's close window. And then there's two more. So there's this one, which I'll share here as, let's go share screen, window. There's this one. Is this the one you want to see?
Yes. So that would be, this is also a CMJ, and this would be a concentric dominant jumper. As you can see,
Do you know what
peak.
the jump height was on this?
I think they're very close. If I remember right, because he was talking about it in the video. So they're around the same jump height, but two different strategies, as you can see. Like his eccentric RFD is not as high.
So when you say eccentric RFD, you're
That's the
looking
red.
specifically at the slope.
The slope, yep, the slope. Not as high. His peak his peak eccentric force is probably not as high either. And then you can see his concentric is good, and that's why he ultimately jumped about the same height as the other one.
So two very different strategies. This guy's taking a lot longer. He's probably lowering more slowly, lowering across a bigger range of motion, hence why the slope is lower. If this was spiking upwards, it'd be a little bit different. Okay, let's talk about how round the curve is. If it's really spiky, generally we're looking at really high peak forces, but not necessarily absorbing energy well. Is that how you would interpret it?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah, if it's spiky, you have higher forces, but you have some leaks. That's what kind of like if you look at 1080 data, that's what like Randy Huntington would say is you have some leaks if it's not very smooth.
Right. So let's go to the last one, which you shared, which is going to be this one. And this kind of looks like, is this a drop jump here?
So that's the depth jump. Yep. And this one is this one is the same athlete who we just saw with the concentric dominant CMJ, but when you switch him to a depth jump, now he becomes eccentric dominant. So now he has much higher rate of force development because he's a volleyball player actually, and he has a higher eccentric peak than concentric peak. But you can see he's still lacking in kind of that concentric rate of force development, and that's why he's not jumping probably as high as he could. But his eccentric qualities are actually pretty good.
So when you look at the landing and you're looking up until this point, how would you say, oh, this is where, because this really to me steps off a box, he lands here, right?
Yep.
Like that's touchdown.
Yep.
So then what's a bit confusing to me is he like re-lowering, or is like, this is where I get a little bit confused, is at this dip right here.
Yeah, he could just be
like, is this amortization?
A little bit of,
this should be amortization right here, right?
He's trying to, so he lands, and then as he's producing force, because obviously when he lands, he has a higher ground reaction force than when he's jumping, right? So the ground reaction force dips down. He has maybe a little bit of I guess you could call it a force deficit there, maybe like with that little spike, and then he starts producing force pretty rapidly because I think he didn't go to a very deep knee flexion angle.
Right.
I think it's pretty shallow. Like it was a pretty quick jump.
One of the this guy JC Ditch is what he is on Instagram. I definitely want to get him out here at some point. He's a really, really good guy. He's actually super bouncy and very, very like kind-hearted, sweet individual, which really goes a long way with me. I just appreciate when people are just kind. And he has his PhD I think it's JC Ditch. Let me just double check on that. That might be his Instagram. Dr. JC Ditch. Got it right. PhD. But he really does a lot with force plate data. And so he, again, he has a lot of data, but he's a pretty freaky athlete, very, very freaky athlete. And does quite a bit of analysis with, I think he probably does 3D mocap and also does like synchronizes it with the force plates. But if you want to see his curves, it's gonna tickle you when you see
I would
these.
love to see his curves.
Yeah, let's but he's very freak athlete, and he sent me a video of him dunking for the first time, and I was like, dude, what? I was like, what are you doing? He's like, yeah, I only made like one dunk, and I was like, how is that possible? Like, how did you only make one dunk? Like, you were flying right now. And it was because I guess he like doesn't practice it at all. I don't know, but
How tall is he?
he's not very tall, dude. I mean, wait until you see this dunk. I love when smart guys jump high. Oh, I've got a lot of stuff I gotta do here. Let me see. Let me see here. You probably hear it. Present, share screen, Instagram. Here we go. Where is this at here? Oh, here we go. Oh, he punches that.
He only made one?
Yeah. Bro.
You got some balance, dude.
He bangs out. You know who he actually trains with? He trains at the same gym as Hunter in Wisconsin.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's kind of funny. So, but dude, here's his counter movement jump. Check this out. This is crazy. Let me share this. But yeah, super forceful guy. Pretty freaky athlete, actually. I'll show you this again. You ready?
Okay, I need to put
Bro, look at that eccentric peak.
Dude, yeah, see, yeah, oh my gosh.
Isn't that crazy? Look at that.
Straight freaking line.
Dude, his eccentric RFD is insane. Crazy. So that's what I'm saying. On the force plate, it's 27. That's hands on hips, dude.
I know.
That's hands on hips.
That's super impressive.
Right? Like those numbers are crazy.
I wonder what his approach for it is.
I mean, I would, based on that, like in his 40s for sure. I mean, you look at the jump, and the jump is kind of crazy looking. I mean, he drops like pretty deep into that jump.
But he drops really fast.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay, here's something. So this is pre-testing 11-1, standing reach, normal, real, stretch like Laffy Taffy, 95. That's how I like to stretch it out. But yeah, either way, he's a good athlete.
That's him?
This is him. Just a pretty normal guy. It's totally normal dude. But I love it. I love it so much. But I always appreciate guys that have PhDs. I know the grind. My brother has a PhD, and it's just brutal. You have to be so data science oriented, and not like a doctor of physical therapy type like doctorate. It's like a just straight research doctorate, which is a little bit different than what you guys do.
Right, dude, yeah.
So it's hard. It takes a lot of time. Very tedious. Every PhD is created differently. They're not created equally. Meaning like a PhD in medical science or like biology is going to be a lot different than a PhD where they like counted the number of people that went into McDonald's. You can get a PhD for doing both, but they're not the same. Like they're very different. And I think anytime you're getting more into like longitudinal studies, actually, I would say the more you get into basic science, the harder it is. Like if you're cutting you're cutting up rats and like analyzing muscle tissue or like putting drugs in it and looking at like enzymes. That's very intense basic science. Or like, I don't know, I can't even think of a different one. That's what my brother did. He literally was like looking at rat muscle tissue when it was like, and like blood vessel proliferation and the way that different enzymes and cytokines were like, dude, he's brilliant. My brother's like, if I can't even follow it, that like, it's some pretty high level stuff. And like he's told me so many times, he's tried to explain it so many times, and it is still so confusing to me on what he's actually studying. And just the whole process is fascinating. But it is very, very complex. It's in exercise physiology.
Oh,
But
wow.
he's more on the side of like exercise is medicine. So he studies specifically disease. And the reason for that is because funding and grants is going to support that. It's not going to support like, oh, I want to go research distance running. Like no one's going to give you a grant for that. You know what I mean? Unless you're a private company that's going to not share that for, they're not going to share that publicly.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not going to put a bunch of money in it to just benefit the field. Like they would probably do in-house research or something like that. And a lot of the time what happens is these people like my brother get poached for for pharmaceutical companies, and they'll do research like in-house research for them, which like, do you really want to go help, charge more for medicine for like children with cancer? Like, no, obviously not. And so my brother has a really strong moral compass and he's really passionate about teaching. But yeah, I think this is a good place for us to shut this down for now. We'll maybe get more into this later. Hopefully, Ben, you can get access to some force plates and you can get some data.
Hawkins, send me some at least, please.
Yeah.
Someone sponsor me.
Yes. You can DM them and ask.
I should actually.
You should. Yeah, just reach out and say, hey, I'd be really interested to do this, and see if they'll send you some. I mean, I don't know. You can lease them. They're not like that crazy. I mean, they're pretty expensive. So, all right. Well, that's the podcast, guys. If you're interested in getting coaching from us, go to THPStrength.com. We're super passionate about it. I'm probably going to be on messaging for an hour or whatever after this, just answering whatever comes in. Isaiah, I think, is on right now. You guys might be seeing this if it's around 1 o'clock EST. But yeah, we'll catch you guys tomorrow. And ciao, au revoir, bye-bye.